The hardest pain in his life did not come from an enemy. It came from the brother he trusted more than anyone else. With just a few cruel words and one terrible choice, everything he had worked for was taken away. His family believed the lie. His friends turned their backs on him. Even the place he called home no longer welcomed him. As he walked away carrying only a small bag and a broken heart, his brother watched without saying a word. That moment changed both of their lives forever. One brother lost everything. The other believed he had won. But time has a way of revealing the truth, and the day would come when the brother, who caused so much pain, would wish he could take it all back. What could make a man regret betraying his own brother for the rest of his life? Before that painful day, Daniel believed family would always stand together. He was kind, honest, and never afraid of hard work. Every morning he helped on the small family farm before the sun was fully up. He dreamed of growing the farm one day and making his late father proud. His older brother, Michael, was the person he admired most. Daniel followed his advice, trusted his words, and believed they would face every problem together. But little by little, things began to change. Michael became distant. He hid conversations, guarded family papers, and grew angry whenever Daniel asked simple questions. Daniel tried to ignore the signs because love made him believe everything would be fine. Then one afternoon, after the family gathered to hear their father's final wishes, Michael made a choice that destroyed the bond they had shared since childhood. The room fell silent as Michael stood with a folded paper in his hand. His voice was calm, but every word cut deep into Daniel's heart. He told the family that their father had left the farm and the house to him alone. Then he looked at Daniel and claimed that Daniel had planned to sell the land after their father's death. Gasps filled the room. Neighbors who had come to pay their respects looked at Daniel with shock. His uncle shook his head in disappointment. Even people who had known Daniel since he was a child believed the story, without asking a single question. Daniel could hardly speak. "That isn't true," he said, his voice shaking. "I would never do that. Dad loved this farm. I loved it too." Michael only sighed and acted as if he felt sorry for his younger brother. "I wish that were true," he replied, "but I have proof." No one asked to see the proof. They had already made up their minds. Daniel felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. The farm where he had laughed with his father, planted seeds with his own hands, and dreamed about his future was no longer his home. Before the sun went down, Michael told him to pack his things and leave. Daniel carried one small bag as he walked out through the front gate. The neighbors watched from their yards, but said nothing. Some whispered to each other, others looked away. The silence hurt almost as much as the lies. When he reached the old oak tree at the edge of the road, he stopped and looked back one last time. The home he had loved all his life was fading into the evening light. Tears ran down his face, but he did not let them stop him. He reached into his bag and pulled out the old pocket watch his father had given him years before. Holding it tightly, Daniel remembered his father's gentle words, "Your name is worth more than money. Never lose your honesty, no matter how hard life becomes." Daniel closed his eyes and took a slow breath. He had lost his home, his family, and the trust of almost everyone he knew. But he still had his father's lesson, and no one could take that away. Wiping the tears from his face, he picked up his bag and began walking into the dark. Deep inside, he made a quiet promise. One day, he would prove the truth. He would build a new life with his own hands, and no lie would decide who he was. The first weeks were harder than Daniel had ever imagined. He slept in empty sheds, under trees, and sometimes in old barns when kind farmers allowed him to stay for the night. Every morning he woke before sunrise and searched for work. Some people turned him away because they had heard Michael's story. Others simply had no work to offer. Still, Daniel never stopped asking. One afternoon, an old carpenter named Mr. Harris saw Daniel helping an elderly woman carry heavy bags across the market. Daniel did not ask for money. He smiled, wished her well, and quietly walked away. Mr. Harris noticed the kindness in the young man and called him over. "I need someone who is not afraid of hard work," the old carpenter said. "The pay is small, but if you are willing to learn, I will teach you." Daniel accepted without thinking twice. The days were long. His hands became rough from cutting wood, sanding boards, and lifting heavy tools. He made mistakes and sometimes stayed late to fix them. Instead of becoming angry, Mr. Harris patiently showed him how to improve. Little by little, Daniel's skills grew. He learned that strong furniture was built one careful piece at a time, just as a strong life was built one honest choice at a time. Months passed, and people began to notice his work. Families asked Mr. Harris to build tables, chairs, and shelves, and Daniel helped with every project. Customers often thanked him for his polite manners and careful work. For the first time since leaving home, he felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. When Mr. Harris became ill one winter, Daniel managed the workshop by himself. He finished every order on time, and even earned a few new customers. The old carpenter smiled proudly when he returned. "You have become more than my helper," he said. "You have become the man this workshop needs." Soon after, Mr. Harris offered Daniel a partnership instead of a job. It was the greatest gift Daniel had received since losing his family. He worked even harder, saving every coin and treating every customer with respect. As the seasons changed, the small workshop became one of the busiest businesses in the town. People no longer spoke about the young man who had been driven away. They spoke about the honest craftsman whose work could be trusted. Daniel stood outside the workshop one evening, looking at the new sign with his name beside Mr. Harris's. For the first time, he believed his future could be brighter than his past. Far away, word of his success was beginning to reach the ears of the one person who never expected to hear Daniel's name spoken with respect again. The years passed, and Daniel's life slowly became everything he had once hoped for. The small workshop grew into a successful business that served people from nearby towns. Young workers came to learn from him, just as he had once learned from Mr. Harris. Daniel treated each of them with patience and respect. He remembered what it felt like to have nothing, so he never looked down on anyone who was struggling. When Mr. Harris decided to retire, he placed the workshop in Daniel's care with complete trust. "You have earned this," he said with a proud smile. "Not because you are the best carpenter, but because you are the best man to lead it." Daniel accepted with tears in his eyes. He knew this was not only a gift, it was proof that honesty and hard work could build a future that no lie could destroy. People in town spoke highly of him. They knew him as a man who kept his word, paid fair wages, and always found time to help others. If a family could not afford a table or a bed, Daniel quietly lowered the price, or gave it away without asking for thanks. He no longer worked to prove anyone wrong. He worked because it was the right thing to do. The pain of his brother's betrayal had not disappeared, but it no longer controlled his heart. Instead of filling himself with anger, Daniel filled his days with purpose. He learned that carrying hate only made the load heavier. Letting go did not mean forgetting. It meant refusing to let the past steal his future. One afternoon, a traveling merchant stopped by the workshop to pick up a large order. As he watched the busy workers and the long line of customers, he smiled. "I passed through your old village last week," he said. "People there cannot stop talking about a carpenter named Daniel. Some say they never believed the stories about you. Others wish they had treated you differently." Daniel quietly thanked him and returned to his work. He did not ask about Michael. He was not ready to look back, but the merchant had more to say. "I also heard your brother has fallen on hard times. The farm is failing. Many debts have piled up, and people say he is searching for someone who can help." Daniel's hands became still. For a long moment, the workshop was silent except for the sound of a hammer in the distance. The name he had tried to leave behind had found its way back into his life. As the sun began to set, Daniel looked out the workshop window. Deep inside, he felt that this was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a meeting that neither brother could avoid. A few days later, there was a quiet knock at the workshop door. Daniel looked up from his work and froze. Standing outside was Michael. He looked older than his years. His clothes were worn, his shoulders were bent, and the confidence he once carried was gone. For a long moment, neither brother spoke. Finally, Michael lowered his head. "Daniel," he said softly, "I need your help." Daniel invited him inside and offered him a chair and a glass of water. He did not speak with anger or pride. He simply waited. Tears filled Michael's eyes. "The farm is almost gone," he admitted. "The debts are more than I can pay. The people I trusted have left me. I have nowhere else to go." Daniel listened quietly. Then Michael reached into his old bag and placed a folded paper on the table. "I have carried this for years," he whispered. "It is the real will father wrote before he died." Daniel slowly opened it. As he read the words, his hands trembled. Their father had left the farm to both sons equally. He had written that they should care for each other and never let money come between them. Michael covered his face with his hands. "I hid the real will," he said through his tears. "I paid someone to write a false one because I wanted everything for myself. I thought money would make me happy. Instead, I lost my family, my friends, and my peace. Every day since then, I have lived with that shame. Daniel closed his eyes. The truth he had waited years to hear was finally before him. Michael fell to his knees. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, he said. I cannot give you back the years I stole from you, but I am sorry. If you send me away today, I will understand. Daniel looked at the man in front of him. This was not the proud brother who had driven him from home. This was someone broken by his own choices. He gently helped Michael to his feet. I cannot change the past, Daniel said. Neither can you, but I will not answer your wrong with more wrong. I forgive you, not because you earned it, but because I refuse to carry hate any longer. Michael began to cry even harder. In that moment, he understood that losing the farm was not his greatest punishment. The real cost of his betrayal was realizing he had thrown away years with the brother who had loved and trusted him most, and no amount of regret could ever bring those years back. Daniel did not pretend that everything was suddenly normal. Some wounds needed time to heal. He forgave Michael, but he also made it clear that trust would have to be earned again through honest actions, not empty words. Michael agreed without arguing. He knew he had no right to ask for more. Together, they took the real will to the village leaders. After reading it, the truth could no longer be hidden. The false will was exposed, and everyone learned what had really happened years before. One by one, the people who had judged Daniel came to him with heavy hearts. His uncle asked for forgiveness. Neighbors admitted they had believed a lie without asking for the truth. Even those who had turned their backs on him thanked him for showing them what kindness looked like. Daniel accepted their apologies with quiet grace. He did not remind them of their mistakes or make them feel ashamed. He simply hoped they would never judge another person so quickly again. The farm could not be returned to the way it once was. Years of poor choices had left the land weak and full of debt. Michael sold what remained to repay the people he owed. Then, instead of looking for an easy way out, he asked Daniel for honest work at the workshop. He arrived early every morning, worked hard, and never expected special treatment. Day by day, he began to rebuild the character he had once thrown away. The workshop continued to grow, creating jobs for families across the town. Daniel became known not only for his skill, but also for his fairness, generosity, and strong heart. Young people often asked him the secret of his success. He always gave the same simple answer: your name is worth more than money. If you protect your honesty, you will never truly lose. As the years passed, the two brothers slowly found a new beginning. They could never recover the lost years, but they chose not to waste the years they still had. Their relationship was no longer built on pride or greed. It was built on truth, respect, and hard-earned trust. Looking across the workshop one evening, Daniel remembered the lonely day he had walked away with nothing but a small bag and his father's pocket watch. Back then, it had felt like his life was over. Now he understood that losing everything had led him to become the man he was meant to be. Sometimes the greatest victory is not proving your enemies wrong. It is refusing to let their actions change the goodness inside you. In the end, lies may win for a season, but truth, patience, and integrity leave a legacy that lasts forever.